In 2007, Nokia wasn't just a phone company. It was the most powerful name in mobile technology. More than half of the world's phones were made by Nokia. In some countries, that number was even higher. If you dropped a phone and it didn't break, people assumed it was a Nokia. If your battery lasted for days, it was probably a Nokia. And yet, just a few years later, that same company completely disappeared from the smartphone market. Not slowly, not gradually, almost overnight. What makes this story scary isn't that Nokia failed. It's that they saw the future coming and still couldn't stop it. They had the engineers. They had the money. They had the brand. So how did the world's biggest phone company lose to newcomers like Apple and Samsung? And more importantly, could the same thing happen to today's biggest companies, or even to you? That's what this story is really about. Before we talk about failure, you need to understand just how powerful Nokia really was. In the early 2000s, Nokia wasn't just winning the phone market, it was the market. At its peak, Nokia controlled more than half of the world's mobile phone sales. In some countries, that number crossed 70%. If someone said mobile phone, the first name that came to mind was Nokia. Not Apple, not Samsung, Nokia. Their phones were reliable, simple, and nearly unbreakable. The Nokia 1100 became the best-selling consumer electronic device in human history. Battery life lasted for days. Signal strength was unmatched. And most importantly, Nokia phones worked everywhere. Rich countries, poor countries, cities, villages. Nokia also had something competitors couldn't copy easily: distribution. Their phones were available in tens of thousands of small shops across the world. While others were fighting for shelf space, Nokia already owned it. Inside Nokia, this success created a strong belief: we understand our customers better than anyone else. And for a long time, they were right. There's a dangerous phase every successful company enters. It's called the success trap. When you win consistently, you stop questioning your decisions. You stop listening carefully to the market, and you start confusing past success with future safety. Nokia fell straight into this trap. For years, Nokia's strategy worked perfectly. Feature upgrades were enough to dominate competitors. So inside the company, innovation slowly became less urgent. Why take risks when the current system prints money? Psychologically, this is called organizational inertia. Big companies move slower because change feels risky, and at Nokia, change felt unnecessary. Executives believed consumers wanted better buttons, stronger batteries, and tougher phones, not radical new experiences. This mindset is exactly what Clayton Christensen described in The Innovator's Dilemma. Market leaders often ignore disruptive innovation because it doesn't look profitable at first. Nokia wasn't stupid, they were successful, and that success made them blind to weak signals, signals that were quietly reshaping the entire mobile industry. It was already late. Nokia's biggest weakness wasn't hardware, it was software. Symbian OS powered most Nokia smartphones. On paper, it looked advanced. In reality, it was slow, complex, and painful to work with. Symbian was originally designed for phones with buttons, not touchscreens. Adding new features required changing deep parts of the system. Developers often said that building apps for Symbian felt like fixing a machine while it was still running. Now compare that to Apple. When iOS launched, it was built from scratch for touch interaction, smooth animations, simple gestures, and most importantly, a system developers enjoyed working on. At Nokia, even small improvements took months. Internal teams struggled to update the OS without breaking existing features. As a result, Nokia phones felt outdated even when the hardware was strong, and no creator was treating software as a secondary feature. While Apple and later Android focused on ecosystems, apps, and usability, Nokia was still thinking in terms of devices. In a smartphone world, that mindset was fatal. In 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage and introduced the iPhone. Inside Nokia, the reaction was shockingly calm. Some executives even laughed. No physical keyboard, expensive, no removable battery. To Nokia, the iPhone didn't look practical. And that was the mistake. The iPhone wasn't competing on features, it was competing on experience, touch-first design, a full internet browser, and later, an app ecosystem that allowed the phone to evolve over time. Nokia evaluated the iPhone using old metrics: battery life, durability, hardware specs. They missed the bigger picture. Apple wasn't selling a phone. Apple was selling a platform. Consumers didn't want more buttons anymore. They wanted simplicity. Developers didn't want restrictions. They wanted freedom. Nokia underestimated how fast user behavior could change. By the time they realized touchscreens weren't a trend but a transformation, Apple had already rewritten the rules. This was the moment when Nokia lost control of the future, even though sales still looked strong on paper. From the outside, Nokia looked powerful. Inside, it was chaotic. As the company grew, decision-making became slow and political. Teams competed instead of collaborating. Different departments worked on similar ideas without alignment. And most importantly, Bad news stopped traveling upward. Employees later revealed that managers were afraid to report problems. Speaking honestly could damage careers. So instead of fixing issues, people avoided responsibility. Innovation suffered. Engineers knew Symbian wasn't good enough, but pushing for radical change was risky. Leadership wanted quick fixes, not uncomfortable truths. In 2011, CEO Stephen Elop described Nokia's situation in his famous Burning Platform memo. He admitted that Nokia was standing on a platform that was literally on fire, yet people were still debating what shoes to wear. This internal culture killed speed, and in tech, speed matters more than size. Nokia wasn't losing because competitors were smarter. They were losing because they couldn't move fast enough. With pressure rising, Nokia made a bold decision: partner with Microsoft. They abandoned Symbian and bet everything on Windows Phone. The idea was simple: combine Nokia's hardware with Microsoft's software power. On paper, it looked logical. In reality, it was a gamble. The app ecosystem was tiny compared to iOS and Android. Developers didn't see enough users, and users didn't see enough apps, a classic chicken and egg problem. Even worse, Nokia cut off its existing platforms before Windows Phone was ready. Sales dropped immediately. Customers hesitated. Developers left. Nokia had locked itself into one ecosystem with no backup plan. When Windows Phone failed to gain traction, Nokia had nowhere to go. Instead of buying time, the Microsoft partnership accelerated Nokia's collapse. In 2014, Nokia sold its phone business to Microsoft, ending an era that once defined the mobile world. Here's the most painful part of Nokia's story. They had the chance to adopt Android. Android was open source, flexible, rapidly improving. Samsung chose Android and transformed itself from a struggling manufacturer into a global smartphone leader. Nokia, however, believed Android would turn phones into commodities. They feared losing control, so they rejected it. That single decision reshaped the entire industry. While Samsung used Android to scale fast, Nokia stuck to Windows Phone. One company adapted, the other resisted. Android wasn't perfect, but it evolved quickly. Nokia needed evolution, not control. By the time Nokia reconsidered, the market had already chosen sides. In business, timing matters. And sometimes, the biggest mistake isn't choosing wrong, it's choosing too late. The decline was fast. Market share collapsed. Once dominant Nokia phones disappeared from stores. Consumers moved on. Developers stopped caring. In 2014, Microsoft officially acquired Nokia's phone division. The brand that once ruled the mobile world became a memory. Nokia didn't vanish completely. It survived in networks and infrastructure. But its identity as a phone company was gone. The fall wasn't caused by one bad product or one bad decision. It was the result of slow reactions, internal fear, and underestimating change. Nokia didn't fail because they lacked resources. They failed because they stopped adapting. And that's why their story still matters today. Nokia's story isn't about bad luck, and it's definitely not about stupidity. Nokia failed because of 3 dangerous mistakes that still destroy businesses today. First, success can blind you. When things work for too long, you stop questioning them. Nokia kept improving the past instead of preparing for the future. Second, culture beats strategy. Nokia had smart people, but fear-based management killed honesty. When employees are scared to speak up, innovation dies quietly. Third, timing matters more than perfection. Android wasn't perfect. The iPhone wasn't perfect. But they evolved fast. Nokia waited for the right moment and missed it. The biggest lesson here is simple. In technology, in business, and even in life, standing still is the fastest way to fall behind. Nokia didn't fail because they changed too much. They failed because they didn't change fast enough. And that's a mistake no leader, creator, or entrepreneur can afford to repeat. If you enjoyed learning why Nokia failed, hit like, subscribe for more business breakdowns, and comment which company you want next. See you in the next one.